place where millions of people share memes, discuss hobbies, and seek advice. But not everything on Reddit is as harmless as it seems. My mother has poisoned me. May 17th, 2013. On the r/offmychest subreddits was posted this subreddit in which the Redditors claiming they were poisoned by their mom. The post reads, "This is a throwaway account. Ever since I became an adult about a decade ago, my mother has been against me moving out of the house. I finally got a job as a line cook 3 years ago. My mother and rest of family, which includes my sister and father, has been against it, mainly saying that such a job cannot sustain me," which was true. They also said that I would hate working, which turned out to be false. About a year and a half later, I quit due to health reasons. The following spring, I got a new job as a computer programmer. While they seemed supportive at first, my mother and sister, who I lived with, gradually became hostile. Eventually, I moved out of the house. About a month later, I lost my job, and about 3 months later, moved back home. Everything was cool at first, but as I was getting calls from recruiters and going to job interviews, they gradually became more hostile again, accusing me of being distant and not caring for them. However, they seemed to be very controlling and hateful of the fact that I wanted to move out and wanted a decent job. So, last month I finally got that job as a programmer again, but it was out of town. I had just enough money to relocate to the new city. They became very hostile starting a few days before I left, accusing me of not loving them, of hating them. On the day before I was scheduled to leave, my mother gave me 2 of the styrofoam ramen noodles cups and tore that cardboard covering that normally comes with it and threw it away. I was suspicious that they would try to sabotage my life, so I was careful in not trying to anger them. She gave a few more food items, which I didn't use, to take on the trip with me. When I arrived at my new city and entered my hotel room, I chilled out. I was to go to work the next day. So, after the first day at work, I ate a cup of ramen noodles and felt ill. I knew that feeling because my sister fed me something that made me feel the same way in late 2011, which I then assumed was because of my recent illness. I felt weak, lightheaded, and short of breath. I drank water to make me feel better because that's what I did last time that happened to me. Over the week, my mother kept calling me, making sure to remind me to eat my ramen noodles. I was short on cash then, waiting for my first paycheck. I never told her that I ate it. I suspected then that I had been poisoned, and, after doing some Googling, believed it was cyanide. Now that is something that you should never have to think, that your own mother would do that to you. So I resisted that thought, because I simply could not bear to think that. So I went to http://cyanidetest.com/ and ordered a kit, and I tried it. Now look at the graphics in the video on this page. Now here are the results of my test. I guess I am going to have to call the cops, and I will never speak to my family again. Later that day, the Redditor provided an update stating that they had visited the Capitol Police in Topeka, Kansas, with some evidence. However, the officer they spoke to said they couldn't take action because the package had already been opened and could have been contaminated. A few months later, the Redditor posted a part 2 of the story. I was only able to file a police report, but only that, so far. The police do not have enough evidence to investigate. I have gone no contact with my family. I currently live in a cheap motel in Topeka, Kansas. Yesterday, after getting home from work, I work for the Kansas state government as a software developer. The lady at the front desk told me that my mother called them to speak to me. For security reasons, the motel needs both the name and room number, and my mother didn't have my room number. She didn't even attempt to call me cell phone, which makes me believe that she just wanted to know if I was staying there and where. So this morning I leave a little earlier than usual. The sky was still in the early twilight phase. I take the bus to and from work because my car blew a gasket almost a year ago, before I moved and got my current job. As I was talking towards the bus stop, I saw someone in a strange car. She told me that if she visited, she would be using a rental car, using the finger to tell me to come here. I looked but kept on walking. Then she opened the car door, and she was in a black outfit and a hood, which is strange for my mother. Then I knew it was her when I saw her face. She told me to come here, and I said no, kept a good distance. She said that she just wanted to know if I was okay, so I said, yes, I am. She said that she just wanted a hug, but I said no. I don't know if there was anyone else in the car with her, but she is a gun owner and a good shot. She routinely kicked all of our asses in duck hunt when I was a little kid, and still PDU'd when playing Wii games with the gun controller. I ended up taking another bus to get to my job, so when I get off of work, what is the best way to go home, or should I even go? If not, where should I go? I really think that it is not safe for me here in Topeka, so if anyone knows of any .NET development jobs, please PM me. Also, please give me some advice. We can't be certain that the story is fully true, but if it is, imagine the severe trust issues and the pain caused by finding out that one of the dearest person to you tried to kill you. Picture this. One day, out of nowhere, 12 nearly identical convenience stores open up on that same street. Is this just a quirky business idea? Or could there be something more sinister at play? On the r/too afraid to ask subreddits, 5 years ago, this was posted in which reads, 12 mysterious and identical stores open on my street. What could be happening? I live just outside a big city in what resembles a suburban main street. Like many suburban main streets, retail business has been rough and they've all closed down. After a month of nothingness, suddenly 12, yes, a dozen, identical convenience stores pop up. They look the same, they aim for the same floor plan, they sell the same products at the same prices. The names are all tiny variations off of each other, like Town Name Mart or Market of Town Name, and all clearly bought their signs from the same places. The fonts, colors, size, and shapes are identical. These stores see no business that I've ever witnessed, yet have large staff numbers, and are surviving way longer than the former stores that closed on this street. When I enter one, they all stare at me while I shop. I don't usually get nervous, but it feels like they're staring threateningly rather than intently. They only accept cash unless you pay some $50. Most of their products are Walmart brand great value products being resold for higher prices. Most of the products are expired food products. I bought bread from one without checking because I was in a rush, and it turned out it was 2 months expired. Upon returning to show them, I found that the entire shelf was expired foods. What was even grosser was the dairy cooler, which had ancient milk products. I'm so confused. I feel like I'm in an episode of The Twilight Zone. What's probably happening here? There are also other people replying to the story suggesting that it might be some kind of shady business, drug trafficking, money laundering, or even human trafficking. So was this story true, or just a work of fiction? Honestly, who can say? But whether it's fact or fiction, one thing's for sure, it's the kind of story that makes you question reality, makes you look a little closer at the ordinary, and maybe, just maybe, makes you wonder what's really going on behind those closed doors. The next story was posted on r/confession subreddits on January 11th, 2013. I pretended to be a guy online, and a woman moved halfway across the country to be with someone that didn't exist because I was too scared to tell the truth. From late 1999 to early 2001, I pretended to be a man online and had several women that I communicated with daily through email, nearly all of whom wanted to have a relationship with me. I created an entire backstory for this fake man, and the backstory was so consistent that it seemed real, even to me. I found older women, in their late 40s, 50s, through dating sites, and just by contacting random strangers through instant messenger. I was never flirty with them, never sexual, nothing like that, but all of the women I emailed with were vulnerable in some way. A couple of them were unemployed and living with family. One of them was marginally employed but suffered from poor health. Another was recently divorced. Another was just looking for some sort of adventure in her life. I liked the attention. I liked always having emails waiting for me. I liked it that I was someone these people admired. It eased my loneliness. At the time, I was a 14-year-old high school student stuck in a new town in the middle of nowhere with no one to talk to. I didn't like people my own age and had no real interest in the stuff teenagers are normally into. Like I said, it was never romantic. I'm a straight female. And on the few occasions that a woman would make it clear that she wanted a romantic relationship with me, I ended it. I told them at the time that I was only looking for friends, and that I thought women made better pen pals. I gave them some bullshit about women being easier to talk to, open to new ideas, etc. But really all it was that I was afraid if I had a male pen pal, he'd eventually realize that he wasn't talking to another man. I would take stories from my own life, or stories I had heard, spin them a little, and make them part of this man's background. I planned out what college he'd gone to during what years, what towns he had lived in, what jobs he'd had, what countries he had traveled in, what businesses he had owned. I made details about his childhood, even right down to what the wallpaper in his childhood bedroom had looked like. I had an entire timeline of his life so that the story would be consistent from person to person, so that I would never be caught in my own lie. His life was a reflection of what I wanted my life to be at that age, and so I was sort of living through this character, and it worked. People believed me. Like I said, I found some of these women through dating sites, but I had no intention of being romantic with them. Whenever one of them contacted me through the dating site, I always had an excuse as to why I didn't want a romantic online relationship. The profile is sort of old, and I'm seeing someone right now. I really want to get to know you first, etc. A few of them were surprisingly fine with just being friends. It's just that dating sites are a good place to find people who were willing to open themselves up to another person. Remember, this was the early 2000s, before there were a lot of pen pal sites. I happily hid behind this persona online, and eventually began instant messaging every day with this one woman named Pat. Pat was going through a rough time in her life. She was deeply in debt, unemployed, living with her sister, whom she despised. There had been a domino effect of shitty happenstances that had occurred in her life over the course of a few years that had landed her in that position. Pat was in her early 50s, and I got so that I really enjoyed talking with her. She was smart and funny and open to talking about all the new ideas that were fermenting in my teenaged head, which I pretended were coming from a 50-something dude who was undergoing an emotional awakening after a lifetime of emotional suppression. She didn't have anything better to do, and I, being a now 15-year-old teenager on summer break in a town where I had no friends, didn't have anything better to do either. Pat lived in Minnesota, and I told her that I lived in southern Florida near the ocean. She loved hearing about what the ocean looked like that day. I knew how to access webcams of the ocean, she did not, so I would just tell her what the waves looked like. I even sent her some shells from a beach when I vacationed in FL late that summer, so that the postal code stamp would be near where I had told her that I lived. I made up historical facts to tell her, which were completely false. I went through relationship dramas as this man that she advised me on. I told her of spiritual awakenings that I'd experienced. She told me things she said she'd never told anyone, etc. I found pictures online of a random nobody and sent those to her, claiming it was me. I found other pictures of a random house and sent those to her, claiming it was my home. We were good friends. It's just that I wasn't who she thought I was. Pat very nearly caught me a few times because sometimes she wouldn't believe what I'd said, and she would tell me she didn't know if I was real. I always managed to smooth it over somehow. However, she wanted to talk to me on the phone, and worse, she wanted to meet me. In fact, by the end, she insisted on it. By that time, she had started working again and had some money. She also wanted out of her situation and to start over. I don't know why I did this, but eventually we got to talking about her coming to live with me at an entirely fake address in southern Florida. We planned it all out meticulously and had known each other for a year. I even told her that I had a friend who was a business owner and would give her a job. This was the only time I spoke to Pat on the phone, when I was pretending to be this friend with a business, and I interviewed her for a job that didn't exist in a small business that didn't exist. She wanted to speak to me, the fake me, on the phone, and somehow I always managed to beg her off, telling her that my phone was broken, which was ridiculous, since most internet still ran off the phone line in those days, and that I would call her soon, I promise, soon. I would lay awake at night, telling myself that I had to tell Pat who I really was. This woman was about to uproot her entire life to be with someone who didn't exist. But I felt like I was in too deep, and a big part of me really believed this lady would connect the dots and wouldn't really go through with it. I was also 15 and scared of getting in trouble. With who, I don't know. The day came when she was going to fly from Minnesota to the airport near where I lived in southern Florida. We had one last instant messenger conversation, with her very excited about her new life, and with me assuring her that I would see her in just a few hours, that I would be there to pick her up. I'd have a sign and balloons and everything. I gave her a made-up phone number to reach me with. I agreed that she could stay at my place for a few weeks until she got a couple of paychecks under her belt and she could find her own place. It was like I was watching a stranger typing those words to Pat, like I was on autopilot, like it wasn't real. She had told me that she had never taken this big of a chance, but that for once in her life she wanted adventure. Adventure like the kind I, or rather my fake persona, had had in his life. She was tired of being scared of life and wanted to embrace it. Those next several hours were torturous. I tried to act normal at home, but it was impossible. Again, I really believed that she would wise up and call it off at the last minute. Unfortunately, she didn't. A day later, I get an absolutely irate email from Pat, demanding to know where I was. The phone number had connected her to a dry cleaner's. The business didn't exist, according to the yellow pages. 3 more emails came throughout the course of the next 36 hours. She was writing the email from a library and only had enough money to stay at a hotel another few nights, and then she didn't know what she was going to do since she didn't have enough money to get back home. She said she had never taken a leap of faith in her entire life, and that she had trusted me because she just needed one person in the world who she could trust, and who believed she was a worthwhile human being after all of the shit that had happened to her in the past few years. She berated herself for being an idiot, for being misled, for going with her heart instead of her brain. It tore me up. Look, I realized that both she and I made mistakes, but it tore me the hell up to know that there was a lady out there somewhere, someone I considered a friend, despite everything, that was going through such turmoil, and that I had caused it. Her last email was one last attempt to get in touch with me, pleading to please answer her. She must have realized by that time that I wasn't real, but was hoping I could somehow help her out anyway. But there was nothing I could do. I never answered. In fact, I shut down that entire email address and put that entire episode behind me. I don't know what happened to her. There were so many red flags she should have seen, the fact that I wouldn't speak to her on the phone being the biggest. I think she was desperately looking for something in her life, and however temporarily, I managed to give it to her. Maybe she just wanted to believe, and so she ignored her rational mind. But you know that episode of The Simpsons where Bart writes fake love letters to Mrs. Crabapple, who believes they are from a real guy? And how torn up Bart is when he realizes how upset and humiliated Mrs. K will be when she realizes she's been duped? That's how I felt. I let the whole thing go too far, and I must have really hurt and humiliated someone. I feel terrible about that. It wasn't right. I shouldn't have done it. No excuses. Period. Every time this memory pops into my head, I get that cold feeling of shame all throughout my body. I don't even totally know why I did all this. Pat, wherever you are, I am sorry. That's all for today, guys. Hope you liked it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by leaving a comment below. Your feedback helps me create more content you'll love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more updates. See you in the next video.